if you're like, hey, I can get the job done, I'm the best person who can design the logo, who can design the website, you are basically just looking at 1 out of 10 things. Now, the smaller the client, the more they focus on just the execution, right? So if you're dealing with a startup, if you're dealing with a new business, if you're dealing with a small business, they are basically at a level where the most important thing for them is the output. Okay, so I'm supposed to be working, but I'm in OBS recording some videos right now, so I figured I might as well do this. So I saw a tweet that said, where's the tweet? Let me find it. I saw a tweet that said, most designers confuse the skills that is required or it takes to execute the job. You know what? Let's make this a class since we're in OBS. Uh, yeah, I was giving some design feedback to my designer on something we're working on. But all right, cool. So the tweet said, most designers confuse what it takes to execute the job. Where you at? Sorry, I need to make this black. So they confuse what it takes to execute the job with what it takes to land the job, right? And I think it's a very, very important thing to know because I have been aware of this for a long time and I spend a lot of my time online teaching designers how to think about business. But I think the way it's separated in this tweet makes like the most sense. And I want to explain what the difference is from like my experience, right? So you're a designer, and for the most part in your world, you are all about getting the job done, right? So this execution layer. So how that works typically is like somebody's going to come to you with a problem, and you're going to do some design magic and give them a solution, right? Sorry about that. You're going to do some design magic and give them a solution, and typically a solution is concerned with the colors, the concepts, the actual detail of the execution. If you're a motion person, it's like the animation, whatever it is that you're going to do, you are really, really concerned about getting the best possible outcome for that particular thing. Okay, that's the execution bit. But then there is the whole part of the process where whoever the client is trying to decide who to give the job to, right? So landing the job basically means that of all the different people that are in the marketplace or all the different people that exist that could potentially do what you're doing, the client is deciding to go with you, particularly, right? So most of us creatives, we assume that because I can technically do the job, right? Because I can create the best logo, because I can create the best UI, because I can create the best motion, because I can create the best animation or whatever it is, then automatically I should get a job, right? But the issue is when you're dealing with clients, they are considering a lot of different factors on who gets the job, right? Now, let's assume that we'll get into what those factors are, but for now, let's assume that those factors are like 9 other things, right? In addition to the execution, right? So I'm just trying to make this color nice so we can enjoy this. All right, cool. So let's assume that here's a client, right? And for the client to actually give you the job, he's looking at 10 different things, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Right. So he's looking at 10 different things. Out of these 10 different things, one of them, right? One of these 10 things is the execution. So let's assume that this is the execution, and that's what you are focused on. So if you're like, hey, I can get the job done, I'm the best person who can design the logo, who can design the website, you are basically just looking at 1 out of 10 things. Now, the smaller the client, the more they focus on just the execution, right? So if you're dealing with a startup, if you're dealing with a new business, if you're dealing with a small business, they are basically at a level where the most important thing for them is the output. So they are going to spend a lot more time thinking about the execution, right? So this is the execution. And then the next thing that they might spend time thinking about is the cost, right? So can you get the job done? how much is it going to cost us? So for startups, small businesses, that's mostly what they care about, right? And then they might also sometimes consider, okay, do I like you, right? So let's just put this as likability, right? Because it's also personal, right? So it's like, okay, can you get the job done? How much does it cost? Is this somebody I can work with, right? You can also put like trust in this category, right? Actually, let's make trust a different one, because liking you and trusting you are two separate things, although people tend to confuse the two, right? So for small business, at most, right, like these are the things that they're considering. Can you execute? How much is it going to cost me? Do I like you? Do I trust you? If they can tick yes for more of those things, you get the job, right? But if you're dealing with a big business, they are dealing with things like risk, okay? Because they're really big business, which means that they're about to put a lot of money into this project, right? What are the chances that you can actually deliver, right? So they are looking at risk. How risky are you? Have you done this before? What's the scale of your understanding? Can you actually will you be around in the next 3 to 4 to 5 years, right? They're also looking at policy, right? Because big businesses have different policies on how they can execute projects. So, fun fact, I was bidding for a project recently and I went to meet the client. Clearly, we are the guys that can do the job of all the agencies that are bidding for the project. But the client looks at me and goes like, I can't give you this job. You're not big enough. You don't have a certain number of employees, right? So for that client, it's just not about the execution. It's about the size of the company. Now, he was kind enough to explain to me why that mattered, right? And it mattered to them because they are very old business. They are around for a really long time, and all the partnerships they go into, they're looking at those partnerships on a 5 to 10 year timeline. So basically, this client is looking at me asking, will this guy be around in the next 5 years? Right? And it's just like, if they don't feel like you're around, you can be around for that long, even though you can do a good job for them now, they're not going to take you, right? For some companies, it's about image, right? Because who did the work for them is just as important as the work itself, for a number of different reasons. Because these companies need to go and defend, their decision, right? They're going to choose you. And another thing also is like, you need to think about the number of people who are making a decision, right? That's also like very, very important. So I don't know, let's call that decision makers. And this ties into some of the other stuff as well, because if you're dealing with a very small business, the decision maker is only one person. So the only person they need to convince is themselves and maybe like one other co-founder. But once you want to get much bigger projects that have like really, really, really big budget and longer term commitment, where there's like a lot of potential, you have multiple decision makers, right? So if they're like, okay, we want to work with you, Kwesi, or want to work with you, Ade, or whatever your name is, they now have to go and justify to their 10 other board members why they want to choose this particular agency over all the other ones. And mind you, all the other board members are also going to suggest their guys. They're going to suggest their people, right? So they're also looking at image before they make a decision, because they also don't want somebody who run away with their money, right? And of course, they might be looking for like industry experience, right? Which is like, okay, have you done this work for somebody else like us? How many of them? So, for example, we have a lot of projects in oil and gas. Well, not a lot, but we are beginning to build a portfolio in oil and gas, right? We've done 2 projects. We lost one. We are currently bidding for our third one. So I'm guessing like by the end of this year, we probably may have like 3 or 4 different projects in oil and gas. We have a fair bit amount of projects in tech. We're currently also working on a portfolio in entertainment, right? So if we do meet a client who is a big client in oil and gas, they're obviously going to ask, have you done this for somebody before in our industry? And we are going to go like, yes. And the reason it's important is because big industries have like standards of operation. They have a culture, right? And if you haven't worked for that particular industry before, although you can do the work, okay? Although you can technically deliver the thing, the time cost of you coming in, learning the ropes and all these different things before you can deliver is too long. Somebody who has worked in the industry will most easily be able to deliver for that client much quicker because they've actually done all the groundwork, they have the experience. And I could go on and on and on and on. So the ability to land a project, right? In this case, the ability to land a project is the ability to weave all these things together into a nice story, right? Which means you need to know the industry lingo, right? Let me put another one. They're also looking for relationships. This can go into trust, but like business is also very personal. Like you might think that big business is all about technical credibility. No, big business is about friendship in a lot of ways, more than you'd like to even imagine, right? It matters at a small level, but not as much. But the higher you go, it's about like, do you know this person? Can you vouch for them? Yes, they can do all the work. Yes, you have the industry experience, but who can vouch for you, right? So your ability to land the project, like this tweet was saying, right, is your ability to be able to weave all these things together into a coherent story that convinces the client that, okay, you are the guy for the job. So although subconsciously you may not know that here are all the different things the client is looking for, potential client is looking for, they are checking for it just by instinct, right? So you need to prove that you can do the job, but I also need to prove that you understand the policy, right? Because policy means like, do you have the right accounting structures? Like, can you receive, money? In fact, I don't know how many of you guys are used to bidding for big projects, but on some big projects, they will request that you actually share an earnings report. They want to know how much money you've made. Because if somebody's about to give you $500,000 for a project, they want to know, have you made $500,000 before? Because if all you've made is like $10,000, yeah, you can technically do the job, but how do I know that you can make a $500,000 project? And on some big projects, right? On some big projects, the client's not even going to pay you, right? Your bank would have to take on the risk of loaning you the money to execute the project, and when it's done, the client pays the bank because it's a policy safety mechanism, right? So yeah, most creatives and most technical people assume that all it really takes is like, oh, I can do the job, is the execution. But in reality, all these different factors comes into like consideration when a client is trying to decide who to hire, who to give the job to. So your job, if you really are trying to understand um how big business works, or even if you're just trying to improve yourself and increase your odds of getting better deals, the more of these things you have, the better, right? So it's not just about being able to like, get in Photoshop and get a job done, which is why the people that make the most money are the people who are able to put all these different skills together, right? So the guy who can go, people like me, the guy who can go out and put on the right image and have the right conversation and make the clients feel confident and make them feel trusted, those people like me, we tend to make a lot more money in the long run, and we tend to be rewarded more because these skills are really hard to master. Somebody can go and learn Photoshop and get their stuff done. Somebody can go and learn, like After Effects. And yeah, they are really talented people who do really amazing things. And I understand that. But at the end of the day, being able to land the job is a skill that you have to learn, right? Now, if you're working for small businesses, you mostly may be concerned with like the top four of these things, right? It's like execution, like ability, cost, trust, right? Maybe a little bit of policy, like, oh, we want to pay to your bank account or withholding tax. But like, that's about it. That's about like, you know, maybe a little bit of risk. But like, for the most part, that's it. But the higher you go, the bigger you get, the more all these things come into play. So as a rule of thumb, try to understand all these things. As a rule of thumb, try to like get into all the details and try to improve your storytelling skills, your communication skills, your image, like all of it matters, right? So I think that tweet hits home, and I just kind of want to break it down a little bit more as to like what it actually means to land the job and some of the things that clients might be looking out for in real cases. So if you find this video, share it with somebody who's a creative or a creative agency owner who might be looking to land a job, or somebody's a biz dev, person. Maybe they know this, maybe they don't. And if you have any additions, let me know in the comments. Yeah, that's the video. Cheers.